Yes, we still have some festive themes behind me, and we've still got our festive jumper on, so that must mean that this is my December reading wrap up. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Katrina and I make bookish content here on this channel every week, and then movie reviews here at the weekend. In the description box below you will find all of my social links, including my blog and my Goodreads, where I have posted reviews of a couple of these books. I don't think I have, to be honest. I have talked about these books, however, in some of my Vlogmas videos. So I will leave my Vlogmas playlist linked up above, because I have made a book versus movie for one of these books, and I have talked about my feelings about a couple of these books as well. So let us jump right in. I always divide my wrap-ups into ebooks, physical books and audiobooks, and whilst I do have a couple of physical books to show you, this is another month where we are entirely audiobook, because the only time I had to listen to anything, to read anything, was on my commute to and from work, because December is December, isn't it? And then once I finished work on the 17th, which was just a crazy week, I barely read anything aside from listening to a little bit of audiobook in some downtime. So it's just audiobooks, and I'm not going to apologise for that, because that's absolutely fine. So let us talk first of all about, if I can find it, it has disappeared, A Boy Called Christmas by Matt Haig. Some middle grade, because we need some middle grade in the month of December. I made a book versus movie talking about this one, but I will say that I really did enjoy the audiobook. It was narrated by Stephen Fry. However, I feel like it needed to have been slightly closer edited, because there were some moments where Stephen Fry would shout really loud and then go back to normal volume, and the shouting was too loud, and then if you turn down the shouting, the normal volume was too quiet. So that was my only bugbear with that one, but I go into more detail about this in my book versus movie, so I will leave it linked up above for you. Then another, let's see, I had a DNF, let's talk about that one. I went for We Begin at the End by Whittaker, which was recommended to me by a couple of people actually, and then also made all sorts of, good lists and things like that. And I listened to about 2 hours of it, and as you'll have seen in my very first weekly vlog, if you haven't seen that, I'll try and link that for you as well. Yeah, I just was not connecting with it at all, like not even a little bit. And so I did 2 hours and then I went, nope, not for me. Not for me. Speaking of audiobooks that I listened to during Vlogmas, I listened to Will, which was on my TBR. I had a review copy of this one from Penguin Random House, and so I need to post my review of this one. I shall do it, but if you are sort of looking at this one in the January sales, I had really mixed feelings about it. I found it quite informative. I think maybe I made the mistake of reading some reviews, because then I kind of felt the pressure of looking for what people said in their reviews in the book, because it's a long audiobook and it's narrated by him, which is great, and his sort of tone and his level of excitement or level of seriousness is really reflected in his narration, and so that's great too. However, then parts of the audiobook are cut with music, which is fair enough. He's a rapper, he makes music, his daughter makes music, his wife makes music, it's a whole thing. But when you are driving along in the car and suddenly this like woo music comes on, it's quite disconcerting, because you're then looking for an emergency vehicle somewhere, or wondering, if a sudden like tapping comes on for the start of a song, you're like, oh my god, what's wrong with my car? So it's a little bit jarring if you are listening to this one in the car. If you are listening to it just in the kitchen, or even perhaps if you are listening to it on regular speed, I think that aspect would be okay, but that really bothered me. I was sort of almost like bracing myself every time he was come towards the end of a story, like, oh, is there going to be some sort of noise? And I think maybe if an emergency vehicle had been there, I wouldn't necessarily have known the difference until I actually saw, blue lights in my mirror. But yeah, it was that was a little bit. Then I really liked what he had to say and how open and honest he was about his up and coming, his journey upwards, and what his parents and grandparent said about that journey. I really, really liked that. But then once we got more towards when things were really successful for him, he did get very, very boastful. And he wasn't boastful the entire way through. I think when he did just become more successful, he just got very boastful. And people mentioned that in their reviews. They said that he was sort of arrogant throughout, which I don't think he was. But towards the end, it did definitely take on that tone. And I wasn't entirely impressed with that. And I felt that it kind of like lessened the tone of the ending of the book. And then the ending of the book, it just suddenly ended. You'll see in my vlog, if you've watched my week 3 vlog, it just suddenly ends. And it's like, what? Oh, we're finished. Okay then. All right. So yeah, that was a bit weird. So I had really mixed feelings about this one. I'm glad I listened to it, and I wouldn't take away from the fact that I listened to it, but yeah, it was mixed. Very, very mixed. Yeah, so a DNF and a very mixed feeling one. And then we have, let me find it here for you. Very exciting. The new Lucy Diamond, which came out on the 14th of December. I listened to this one with Mum. This is Anything Could Happen. Your Big Secret is Out. What next? And this is a dual narrative. And interestingly, we started listening to this one on the road to Scarborough. And this one opens up with a mother and daughter who live in Scarborough, and one of them travels to Whitby, and we were travelling to Whitby as well. It was very weird. Then some of the action takes place in Cambridge, and some of the action takes place in New York, and so I loved the settings for this one. I will say, whilst listening on audiobook, if you're going to be stopping and starting it because you're listening in the car for any reason, you may need to sort of go back to the beginning of a chapter each time you start listening, or try and stop it on the end of a chapter, because otherwise it can get a little bit confusing about which person's narrative it is, because we have Lara, we have her daughter, and we have Kirsten. Is it Kristen or Kirsten? I can't remember. And so I love a dual narrative, but if you don't stop at the end of a chapter, you'll pick up the next chapter and you won't necessarily know which woman's narrative it is. But I love a Lucy Diamond, and I love what she does with things. And I thought this was a really interesting concept. I would have liked to have spent more time in New York. That's my only thing, but having a setting just down the road is always a nice thing for me. We like that. And then a couple that I have physical copies of. I think I've covered everything else. Yes, a couple that I have physical copies of that I listened to on audiobook. I did manage to just squeeze in the Christmasaurus and the Winter Witch. We're just going to like shimmy this one, shimmer it for you. I'm going to show you the spreads. Show you those spreads. I love the Christmasaurus. I have the musical edition. A couple of years ago, I sort of showed you what listening to that was like. Listening to the CD whilst reading the book. And I think I would have liked that with this edition. This one says, magic is about to take hold of William Trundle's life again because he's just discovered that Christmas itself is in danger. So I love the concept of it. But I think it was just kind of like trying to do too much the same. And having listened to an additional middle grade that's about a human going and finding some elves, it was perhaps a little bit too much the same for me. So it was good, but it didn't have the magic of the Christmasaurus for me. It is a beautiful book, and the illustrations just really are gorgeous. Little Dear Santa from Tom Fletcher at the end there, and even that is illustrated. I think that's fantastic. It is like, even like the fact that it's got printing on the inside and the end is gorgeous, but I think that comparing it to the first book, it's like not great. I mean, it goes heavily into crumpets. I'm just reminded by this song here. But you see, it's got a song, and I would just like to listen to that song. And even though I listened to the audiobook and it was sort of semi-sung by the narrator, I just would have liked the music like I had with the Christmasaurus. I think that's the only reason I was disappointed in it. I think if you just read the Christmasaurus in itself, this would be a really nice follow-up, and it would be nice to share with children as well. But I think that having done the Christmasaurus musical edition a couple of times now and just loved that you know, tick the track on that it says in the book, and there's Tom Fletcher singing to me. I don't know. It was okay. It was good. It was fine. It just wasn't amazing, and to me it didn't live up to its predecessor. But there you go. I mean, if I was choosing, I don't know, if I was choosing between A Boy Called Christmas and the Christmasaurus and the Winter Witch, I might pick the Christmasaurus and the Winter Witch just because it's less dark. So I think if I was reading it with children, I would go for that one instead. But if I was going for, I don't know. Yeah, it's difficult because I just so loved the Christmasaurus. It won't stop me from picking up the naughty list or whatever, the third one that came out this year. I'm basically just a year behind with the Christmasaurus books, and I don't like to read them outside of super Christmas time. I'll watch Christmas films outside of Christmas time, but some Christmas books are better at Christmas time. So it won't stop me reading the third one in the series or picking up the picture book. But yeah, I was a little bit disappointed. It was fine though. It was fine. Oh dear. We'll take a breath. And then the first book that I actually finished in the month of December, that I do have a review of on my blog, and I have talked about in my Vlogmas video as well, so there's lots of places to find out more about this, was the Arctic Curry Club by Dani read. Decide on a suitably chilly destination. Prep your expectations, mix in some unexpected challenges, simmer until you discover your late mother's recipe book. Stir up some old memories and reconnect with your past. Add a hefty dollop of courage as you host the first ever Arctic Curry Club. Serve immediately to enjoy a story that is guaranteed to warm your heart despite the icy setting. Yes, this one does have a partially icy setting, but it's a bit of a... the cover is a little bit of a lie, because it's got this little like fluffy polar bear with a pan on its head there. The polar bear in this story is decidedly not cute and fluffy. It's quite scary. And not all of this takes place in the Arctic. Some of this takes place in India. And so it's not all cold and icy. It's partially in India as well. Yeah, it says warning may cause extreme hunger. There was some cooking in this, but it wasn't as cooking heavy as other food themed books. I felt like I'd been sold the Arctic Curry Club and then we went to India, and I was a bit like, not sure about that. And then yeah, the polar bear bit, really scary. I will also say that the cold scenes in this made me really cold, and the warm scenes in this made me really warm, and so the writing is obviously excellent. That scene setting just put me really in those moods. But in terms of the writing, I will also say that our main character does struggle with some anxiety related issues, and it ended up making me feel really anxious and sort of almost depressed at times. It had a really strong effect on me in that way, and so it wasn't the light and fluffy read that I thought it was going to be. It was quite tough at points. It really sort of did affect me, and it wasn't exactly what I was expecting it to be. And so yeah, make of that what you will. I wouldn't say I would recommend it, because I think that there would be a lot of caveats to me recommending it to you. I would need to know some things about you before I actually recommend it. And I will say that because it had that effect on me, if you are at all susceptible to that kind of thing, it probably wouldn't be the book for you. And calling it the Arctic Curry Club, I think, is a bit of a mislabeling, and having that cute polar bear on there is definitely a bit of a mislabeling. I did listen to the audio. The narrator was great. I had an audio review copy as well as a physical proof, and so I can't fault the narrator. But yeah, it just wasn't what I was expecting, and I think I needed something a little bit lighter, given the fact that this was a 6th of December release. So maybe, you know, wait and read it in March. I don't know. Yeah, so my first read was a DNF, and then my first finish was a little bit of a disappointment. A couple of other disappointments on there, and a couple of really mixed books. But then December is often a little bit like that. I think I've tended towards reading more middle grade and more graphic novels and poetry in December previously for a reason. It's always busy, isn't it? And so yeah, I finished everything on my TBR except for Just Haven't Met You Yet by Sophie Cousins, because if you've watched my vlogs you will know that I got to about an hour or an hour and a half left in the audiobook, and it returned to the library, and I really thought I had time to read it and I just didn't. And I bought the Kindle book and then tried to find my place in it, and I just couldn't. And then obviously because it had returned, I couldn't find where I was, and so I'm just waiting on it coming back again. But I'm like number 22 on 6 copies, I think, so I will pop it on my January TBR. Speaking of which, make sure you are subscribed and hit that notification bell so that you do not miss out on said January TBR. I'm about to film it just now, and it will be it will already be here and I'll leave it linked for you, or it will be the next video that you will see. Let me know in the comments what you read in the month of December. What's your opinion on what kind of things December should look like? I don't know if I made the wrong choices with some of my books, but I enjoyed the book to movie. I did. I enjoyed doing the book and the movie like literally close together, and then making the video for you here. So I will leave that in the end screen, as well as my Vlogmas playlist, and I will see you with my next video very soon. Thanks for watching.